to the Oshkosh Area School District Nearpod Training. In this training, you will experience a Nearpod lesson built in Google Slides. As a student, you'll learn the process how to build your own Nearpod learning experiences using a Google slide deck or adapting an existing slide deck to add Nearpod interactivity. You'll learn how to use the Nearpod add-on to add both activities and content to your Google slide decks. And you'll also learn how to navigate the Nearpod Library and use your teacher dashboard to customize your lessons for your students and learn how the two different ways that you can launch a Nearpod lesson for your students. This Nearpod training, as you can see, was built in Google Slides. The whole training is built within a Google slide deck. You'll notice that if there's a bar across the top, that means a Nearpod activity or content was added to that slide deck by using the Nearpod add-on. If you'd like to start by getting the Nearpod add-on so you can see how it works, simply click on add-ons in any Google slide deck, and you will search for Get Add-ons. Search for the Nearpod add-on, and there it comes right here, the Nearpod add-on for Google Slides. You can add it and accept permissions, and you will have that add-on available in Google Slides. For this lesson, I have launched a student-paced lesson so that you are able to join it even as you are listening to this video. You can join a student lesson by either visiting joinnearpod.com and entering this code LFAQG. You are also able to use a shareable link if you're sharing lessons with your students, a shareable link or a link directly through Google Classroom. So I'm in my teacher lesson, and I have actually joined this lesson, or am joining this lesson as a student. I'm going to split my screen so that you can see both sides of the dashboard. So you can see that I've actually joined my own lesson. I'm on that student list. I'm going to split my screen using my split tab extension like this. There we go. So within this lesson, as I advance, you can see the teacher dashboard on the left and the student experience on the right. So the student is seeing a poll question that I've inserted within Nearpod. So I'm just going to answer that poll question. I've used Nearpod before, and I'm going to press that blue submit button at the bottom. And you can see very quickly on the teacher dashboard, it will show me that one student has answered this question. It'll give me that answer. Notice that the student name is not showing, but if I click show student names, all student names can either be shown or they can be hidden. So it can be useful to have the option to do both. As I switch the teacher screen, you can see that now we're at a collaborative board. I can choose to, yes, approve student comments before they're posted. That can be handy. Or no, I can choose that those comments appear immediately. Even if I choose no as a teacher, I have the ability to delete a comment if it is not appropriate or if it doesn't match what I'm asking for. So on the student side, just click right there. On the student side, if I share, I want to share how to make assessments more engaging. And I click post, and almost immediately it appears on the teacher side. And again, I can show or hide student names. I can adjust in my settings if I want students to be able to like each other's post. And if I click that trash can, that post will immediately disappear. Students can also use an image search within the collaborative board. So if students want to use emojis to show how they're feeling, this is not a great example, but emojis can also be used within that collaborative board. So it can be images or text. So it can work for different grade levels. As I click the teacher dashboard, there's our goal for this lesson, and that will appear on the student dashboard. This is a student-paced lesson, so you notice I have navigation arrows in both areas. If I had launched as a teacher-paced lesson, the student screen will only change as I change my teacher screen. If you're experiencing this lesson through a video, the next piece is a time to climb. Time to climb is a gamification aspect of Nearpod. Since I'm student-paced, the student is allowed to start this time to climb on their own pace. If I were within teacher-paced, the teacher would be setting the tone, setting the control of the time to climb. So there's a few questions in here. So if you choose to, there's my volume. There's a little music with time to climb. The kids get to choose their character, and on the teacher screen, they can display the leaderboard. We'll just advance the screen beyond that time to climb. The next piece you're seeing is the video integration through Nearpod. Because I chose a student-paced lesson, you can see that students are able to move through at their own pace. In your teacher settings, you are able to set it so that students cannot move on until they have completed the slides. On my student side on the right, you can see this student has a notes navigator, so I could jump from slide to slide to slide and bounce around. You can set it in your teacher settings that students are not able to jump around and they must progress through the Nearpod slide by slide, and they must enter text on each slide before they can move on. When you enter this student lesson, you'll be able to watch this Nearpod lesson that will give you a little overview of features. And you'll see there's some blue dots in here. These are questions that were added within this video integration. If you've experienced Edpuzzle before, it's very similar. You're able to import any video into Nearpod, and you can insert questions so that the video automatically stops at a certain point and that students are answering questions. We'll move past that video integration. And if you're signed into this lesson, which hopefully you did sign in with this code, you are able to try out some of the more interactive features. And I'm actually going to join my screen together because right now there's no need to see the teacher screen and the student screen. We'll maximize my screen just like this. And you're able to navigate through. We've inserted one of many, many PhET simulations that allows students to learn through moving objects around. So you can see this is a balance situation, which could work to teach math equations and so on. So you're given some equalities and inequalities up here. Students are able to change them as well. And they can move objects onto the scale, and they can create the goal is to create equalities or inequalities. They can take snapshots. Looks like they can take up to 4 snapshots. So if I take a snapshot, that will show up within the teacher report so the teacher can see if the student is able to build equalities through this simulation. There are lots of PhET simulations, and we'll take a look at that on the teacher dashboard as well, how you can find your own. I'll advance the slide to the next interactive activity. This interactive activity is an example of a 360-degree tour that you can take students all over the world to experience a field trip. The 360-degree allows them to scroll around 360 degrees. They can zoom in and zoom out. Although there is a button for entering VR, you do not need VR goggles to experience these 360-degree tours. So you can see this is a tour of Washington, D.C. Students that maybe will never have the opportunity to travel somewhere like that can travel through Nearpod. We'll click and advance. The next piece is a 3D simulation. There's many 3D simulations that students can experience. The question mark at the bottom shows students how they can navigate through this simulation. We'll click out so you can see the student can examine the skeleton. They can really zoom in and zoom out. They can rotate that skeleton and so on. On the right side of the screen, you maybe notice that there is a notes navigator, and this is a handy feature for older students. Students can choose to save their notes to Google Drive. When they do this for the first time, or perhaps each time they're in a Nearpod, they'll be asked to choose their student account and allow permissions to connect Nearpod with their Google Drive, and then automatically a Google Doc is open within their account, and all the notes that they have taken are going to be saved there. So I could type, looks like are 23 bones in the hand. So those notes will be saved for them within their Google Drive, along with a thumbnail tile of each slide. Students can close those notes so they're back into full screen mode. The next piece is a draw it slide. So if you're experiencing this in the student pace lesson, if you've logged into the student pace lesson, I'd like you to try out this draw it slide. And you can see there's a direction tile up above. Which content and interactive formative assessment activities are you most excited to try? Some of them are self-explanatory. You've already experienced them in this Nearpod, and others might be ones that you need to click on within your own Nearpod add-on and see what the possibilities might be. You can see this slide is divided into content and activities. So activities students are directly interacting with and entering their own input. So those would be an opportunity for you to gather data from each student on how they are progressing through a lesson. And the content gives you the opportunity to customize your lesson by adding in pieces to your Nearpod. The draw slide is a really powerful piece within Nearpod, the draw it. Any background, any image can be converted to a draw it slide that students are able to draw over, add text to, add images over, even photographs. So on this slide, I can select my color and I can select the features that I'm most excited to try within Nearpod. I love the web content feature. It allows you to be able to embed any web page into Nearpod so that students don't need to leave Nearpod and come back to Nearpod. I think the video interactive activity, the ability to embed questions within Nearpod, the Collaborate board is very powerful, a quick way to gather ideas. Kids love the time to climb that you've already seen. For littles and olders, matching pairs is a neat activity. You can use a combination of images, text, or both within matching pairs. There's so many different features. The Flipgrid integration, the ability to add a short Flipgrid at the end of a lesson or the beginning of a lesson so that students never need to leave Nearpod. There's so many different activities to try out using the Nearpod add-on. If you are participating in this lesson, be sure you click submit so that we're able to see your input as to what activities you think you might be able to use. I'm going to advance the slide forward. And now here's just a couple content connections that I've added using Draw It so you can start thinking about how you might be able to connect your curricular areas. I'm going to switch over to the teacher side. Let's just take a look at what that looks like within the Draw It. I'll advance forward so you can see. So on the teacher side, the teacher is able to see a little thumbnail of every student in their class that is doing this drawing. So if you're doing it together, and I've added directions and I've inserted a piece of text as a background image on a slide, and it's asking students to use the highlight feature to look for the author using dialogue or thinking. So this is what the student will see. The student can hide the directions. There's also an immersive reader enabled so that if a student needs help hearing those directions, there's a play button on the bottom and students are able to hear the directions read to them and then easily navigate right back to that slide. The blue arrow here allows me to hide those directions. The student can hide those directions so they can see the text. So I can click on that highlight tool. I can choose whatever color I'd like to highlight. I can make that tool thinner or thicker. And then I can highlight real easily that section of text. Then the student could add a text box to explain their thinking around that, what they're thinking. So maybe Mrs. Price is that tone that she's reading and is pressuring her students. And then we can, the student can move that text box where they would like to move it. So there you can, as a teacher, you're able to see what students highlighted and they can add their thinking all around that piece. And back on the teacher dashboard, you can see it says it's awaiting a drawing from me. If I click on it, looks like it's not quite showing up within student paste once they press submit. So I'll press submit even though I'm not really finished. It's advanced me to the next slide. I'll go back to that teacher slide and close it out. And now you can see that on the teacher side, the teacher is able to see my work. If you're doing a teacher paste lesson, you're able to see the student thumbnails live as they're working. We'll click back to that student side. The next draw slide, I've inserted a map of the United States. And if you'd like to see how it looks like within the Google slide, we'll just navigate right over here. I inserted a map of the United States as a background, and I added the Draw It feature over the top of it using the add-on, which we'll look at how that add-on looks in just a little bit. And there, I've also added some web directions, or actually a website input. You're able to add audio directions for students so they can listen to the directions. And here I've added a website. So if the student is asked to show a landmark or a landform that each region is known for, and they're meant to be researching at the same time, they can click this web link. It's going to open up in a new tab. So now I can go to Mr. Nussbaum's website, and I can take a look at the southern states or the Midwestern states if I wanted to look for a landmark. I'm going to hide those directions. I can use the safe Google image search right within any draw slide. So if I wanted to look for Mount Rushmore and insert an image over the Midwest, we'll click search. I have lots of images to choose from. Let's pick one and save. And the student can then resize that and put that text right over the top of a state, and then continue doing that for the other regions of the United States. Once the student submits that, it's going to take them right to the next slide. I'll go back to the teacher side, and you can see that that student's submitted slide, there it is. I've submitted it, so now the teacher can take a look and see my work. And if there's other students in there, can toggle back and forth through other students' work as well. We'll close that tab out and go back to the student side. What you're seeing right here, and if you're logged in to your Nearpod lesson, is a matching pairs lesson that can allow you to learn a little bit more about some of the features of Nearpod. We just talked about the Draw It slide, and what you're looking at right now is a matching pairs slide. You can see that there's images and there's text. So I clicked on the Draw It image, and now I'm looking to see where I can match it up. So the Draw It allows students to match vocabulary words to definitions or images. I feel like that was correct. Nope, I'm thinking of matching pairs. So if I click on the Draw It image, students can draw over or on the slide you have created, and there's a correct match. On the teacher side, if I navigate and exit out of here, on the teacher side, if I navigate to that matching pairs, I can see that this student, that's me, has started. I've had 2 tries, and so far I've made 1 match. I can also click view pairs on the teacher side so that this could be a activity you could do together as a whole group. So on this matching pairs, you can try it yourself and go ahead and match. So I have a video. Students can watch a video with embedded prompts and so on. So these are just some of the many features you can use through Nearpod. I'd also like to showcase a few of the Draw It capabilities for littles. So I've actually opened the slide deck for K through 2nd grade, and I'm in the teacher's view. And I've launched this lesson as a teacher-led lesson. So the interface is just a little bit different. Up at the top of the screen, you can see that there's a little S for switch to student view. So if I were using this lesson with students, I could switch the view to look exactly like it does on their screen. I'm going to use the slide navigator at the bottom, and I'm going to navigate ahead to a couple draw slides specific to K2 curriculum. So I'll click on this one. There we go. So I've added a Draw It slide making a background of a volcano. And right now I'm in teacher view. Nobody has joined this lesson, but I'm going to switch to student view, which is what I would do is if I were teaching students how to use the draw features, I would switch it to student view on my BenQ board. And then I could show students how to do those draw features. Or if there's an activity you would want to do whole group, you have the ability to switch between teacher view and student view within this live pace lesson. I'll move those directions up and out of the way. And then I could show students how I could use those draw features or text features. Let's say I wanted to add a label that says magma. I want to tell the difference between magma and lava. There we go. And I can drag that where I would like it to be. Students could use the draw features. Let's thicken that line up a little bit to then draw an arrow and connect it to that feature. So a good way to label diagrams, you can add a preloaded diagram in there with students. So they could label it either on their own, or this is an activity you could do together as a class. I'll click the next screen and we're still in student view. And I've uploaded a mentor text for littles so that you could see how students could take a look. You could ask students, well, what is it about this text that you could do? What are you noticing that you could do within your writing? Circle some things that you noticed that you could do. So we'll just switch the color here. And students might say, oh, well, you could use, I could use quotation marks to show what people are saying. Or, oh, I noticed that instead of just said Peter, they said whispered Peter. So the author could show how Peter was speaking. That's something I could do in my writing too. So again, this is something you could do with those draw features, either whole group or something that students could interact with to analyze a piece of text. All right, now we are going to explore with the Nearpod add-on in a Google slide deck. So I'd like you to either type in slide.new in the web browser, or you can open up an existing slide deck of your choice to experiment with. If you haven't yet added the add-on, make sure you click on add-ons, get add-ons, and then search for the Nearpod for Slides add-on. I already have it, so I'm going to click Nearpod and open Nearpod. And then you'll see a sidebar is going to open off to the right side that shows all the activities and interactive features and content that you could add through Nearpod. So I've got my blank slide. We're going to take a look at how easy it is to use the Draw It feature. I think the most versatile feature within Nearpod with anything. So I'm just going to clear off the text boxes on this slide. And I could either do an image search, or I can simply add shapes of my own. I want to make a Venn diagram, just something simple. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my circle for my Venn diagram. There we go. Make it a little bigger. Make a copy. Paste away. There's my Venn diagram. I can go ahead and make it transparent. We'll make this one transparent as well. There we go. And then I can add some text to it if I want. So let's just go ahead and we'll make something simple. Just say we're looking for the difference between cats and dogs. I won't worry too much about the size. Just make a copy. And I can either type directions on this slide, or actually I'm going to wait and type directions within the Nearpod integration. So not a real fancy slide. I can add a background, but just a simple Venn diagram slide. Now, the Draw It slide can be added as a blank slide. So if I'm scrolling through the features, this will add a brand new slide, a blank Draw It slide. It'll also give the opportunity for me to add a background. But if I have a slide right here already, I'm going to click Convert to Draw It. And it's going to do a little bit of thinking. And you're going to notice that when you convert a slide to draw it, it's going to keep your original slide. So you're able to edit that original slide. I usually take it out of my presentation before I push it out to the kids, but now you can see that Nearpod blue banner across the top. Now that I've got my Draw It slide added, I can add some integration to help my students. If I click on the blue Edit This Slide button, when I'm editing that slide, you'll notice the sidebar pops open. It's actually pulling Draw It activities that are already made, pre-made. Now, I've already made my slides, so I really don't need to look at these, but there are a lot of pre-made graphic organizers right within Nearpod, so feel free to search for those within your account. I'm going to close out that sidebar. Now, notice I've converted it to a Draw It slide, but now I can add instructions. So I might say use text boxes or images to compare cats and dogs. Now, perhaps you're working with littles and you know they're not going to be able to read those directions anyway. With many slides, and especially the Draw It slide, you're able to add media to that. So I'm going to click this box right here, and I can add an image. Perhaps it's an image of a cat or a dog just to look at. I can add a video. Maybe there's a video comparing the two that you want kids to have access to. A PDF for older kids. Maybe there's an article you wanted them to compare features. You can add audio. You can add web content. Maybe there's a website you want them to visit and gather details from. For littles, I love the audio recorder. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And now I can record my directions. Use text boxes or images to compare cats and dogs. I'm going to save that audio. And now when students access this Google Draw slide, whether it's in a teacher-led activity or whether it's student-paced on their own, now they have audio directions that go with the visual directions right there. I'm going to go ahead and save my Draw It slide right there. And you'll notice as it's saved that the original draw slide is there. So if I realize I wanted to change it, I can make those changes and then I could just convert it to draw it all over again. Now the Draw It slide, the Draw It feature, is the only one that will go right over a slide that you've created. All of the other features that you see in the sidebar and that you saw earlier in the presentation will create their own new slides. So let's just take a look at a few of these other features. The Draw It, like I mentioned, is probably the most versatile. I am not going to go through and show all of these features. The Nearpod help section of your account has videos galore on all these features. So I'm not going to go through each one, but the Draw It is one not to be missed. If I scroll down, I also love the web content, the ability to put your own web content right within a Nearpod. So I'm going to click that button and let's say that you are working on exploring letter sounds with kindergartners or first graders, or maybe you're working on sight words and they're working through some different slides within a Nearpod to show what they learned. And as it's loading, you'll see I'm able to add a website URL for students to see. So I'm just going to go over here and grab a website URL for, let's just say, some rhyming words, a rhyming words game for them to practice. I'm going to grab that website address, copy it, and head right back to my Nearpod slide deck. I will paste that right in here. I can test the link to make sure it's going to open up okay. And then if students are working with in the Nearpod, it's going to take them directly to that website. And if it's teacher paced, you can pull them right out of that website when you're ready to move on. So that's a great feature as well. So now you can see I've got a web content slide as well. And just like with the Draw It slide, if I click Edit This Slide, it's going to bring up an interface that will allow me to it's going to bring up an interface that will allow me to, again, test that link or change that link if I need to. Unfortunately, with the web content slide, it's not giving me the ability to add any directions for what to do. So you might choose to include your own slide previous to that, explaining what they're going to do on that web content slide. So we'll go ahead and save that. You'll also notice that there's Flipgrid integration. So with a click of a button, you are able to insert a created Flipgrid activity link that will allow students to complete Flipgrid right within that activity. The matching pairs activity that you saw within the student pace lesson that I just went through, if I click on that matching pairs activity, you can see again, just like the draw it activity, a sidebar is going to pop up on the right, and that will allow me to access matching pairs activities that were already created. So maybe I want to do a search for like the 50 states or the United States. And it already tells me I've got all sorts of matching pairs activities, or I can completely create my own. Let's just click on United States symbols picture match. It's sometimes nice to have something to start from, and this is probably something that kids of all ages, is probably a little bit lower level actually, that could enjoy. And I can add my own pair within that matching pair. So maybe I also wanted to have Mount Rushmore in there, so I can add my text, and I can go ahead and add an image. Again, that Google search, that safe search. And it's really easy to create your own matching pairs slide deck. You can use definitions or pictures, combination of text and images, and then students are able to test their knowledge by matching those pairs. So I used an existing one. With that existing one, I can click on any pair and I can delete that pair if I really didn't want this pair, and so on. I can edit those directions. There is not an opportunity for audio directions, however, on matching pairs. So it should be pretty self-explanatory for students. I can preview those matching pairs and try it out, or I can just go ahead and click save. So most of the Nearpod integrations within the sidebar, the Nearpod add-in for Google Slides, should be pretty self-explanatory. There's just one other feature I want to make sure that you're clear on before we look at your Nearpod teacher dashboard. So I'm going to click on the open-ended question, and at first glance it might seem like this open-ended question is better lending itself to upper grade kids, but you'll see that with the ability to add your own audio and to enable student recordings, kids of all ages can answer it. So I might just type, tell me what you learned about volcanoes. Simple open-ended question. I've got this text editor that I can change sizes and all sorts of things. Lots of characters allowed there. I could add an image of volcanoes, but if it's younger kids, again, I'm going to click here and choose that audio recorder. If I want them to be able to hear the directions if they're completing this on their own, I can click that audio. Tell me what you learned about volcanoes. You can either type your answer or you can speak your answer. I'll save that audio. And now this toggle switch, I believe it's only available in the open-ended questions. Switch on. I would do this for all ages to give kids the opportunity to speak their answer. Enable student audio recordings. Students can speak their answer rather than typing. So you might have students that are reluctant typers, but they love to be able to talk. So giving them that option adds that diversity to your lesson. So we'll click and save. So now I've added several different Nearpod add-ons to this slide deck. None of them are really connected, but you got a chance to see how some of the different add-ons work. So let's say I'm completed with this slide deck and I'm ready to share this slide deck with my students. So I'm working within Google Slides. If I wanted to share this with my colleagues so that they had access to the same slide deck, I would want to make this shareable, and then my colleagues could get this exact slide deck. They could edit the slide deck with their Nearpod add-on if they have their own copy of it, and it will not make any changes within your slide deck if they've got their own copy, or you might work collaboratively. Either way, within your own account, when you're ready to launch with students, I'm going to click Save and go to Nearpod, and then we'll continue by taking a look at, once you have a lesson, how do you launch that lesson with your students? Okay, the very last thing we'll do within Nearpod is take a look around your teacher account. Now, the lesson that I just clicked Save and go to Nearpod, that Google slide deck, It's taken me right into my Nearpod account. If you've never logged into your Nearpod account before, you'll have to accept a few permissions and answer a few questions, but you can see right now I'm in my lesson library. I'm in my library. Your library will be empty unless you've previously launched or saved Nearpod lessons. You can create folders in your library to organize things and so on. So if I scroll down, you can see I've got a few things in my library. So here's my Nearpod practice. So if I'm ready to use this with students, I'm going to choose either live participation or student paced. There's benefits and drawbacks to each of them. With live participation, you are in control of the whole slide deck as a teacher. When you advance the slide deck, it advances on the student's Chromebook. So they need to be participating in real time. If you launch it in student paced, then students are in control. They will have the navigation arrows so they can move from slide to slide to slide at their own pace. And there's some benefits to that as well. No matter which way you launch it, you'll have access to all of their data within your reports section of your account. Now, something to notice before you launch a lesson, your lesson settings, if you click the area where your profile picture is, the lesson settings are located right here. If I click on lesson settings, we'll take a look at some important settings. I'm going to click Enable Student Names to Autofill. That will allow them to log in with their Gmail account, and it just skips the step of them having to type their name. The Immersive Reader is enabled, so check that you've done that. The student notes section that I showed you, you can enable or disable. You might not want that notebook to show with your K2 students. If you don't intend to ever use it, it could be distracting. You can choose to show those results to multiple choice and quiz questions in student pace mode or not. That just allows them to see instant gratification of if they got the answer correct or not. Allowing students to resubmit answers when you're live. I like to keep that on. If they've submitted an answer and then you want them to be able to have it back and add more detail, there's a little edit button that they can do that. And the Collaborate board enabled in student-paced lessons. That's up to you. Many teachers want to moderate that Collaborate board in case there's anything naughty within it. And requiring student responses and preventing skipping in student pace mode. If they're doing student pace mode right in front of you in the classroom, I might turn that on if it's important to you that they not skip slides. But if they're doing it on their own, this could be a level of frustration. So I might keep it off so they're able to navigate at their own pace. Now, if I want to get back into my Nearpod library, I can click the word Nearpod up here, and it's going to take me out of my settings right back to where I was in the library. No matter how you launch a lesson, whether you click live or student paced, it automatically generates a new code each time. I can keep a live lesson active for however long I want. With a student paced lesson, if I click on that one, you have the option to set a calendar for however long you would like the code to remain active. The default is for about a month. And just like a live lesson, you can share through Google Classroom, you can embed, you can share a link, or you can have the kids go to join.nearpod.com and type in this 5-digit code. There's always going to be this toggle button to require student responses and prevent skipping that you can toggle on or off. Just keep in mind with a student-paced lesson, if the students don't finish the lesson within one sitting and then they log off their Chromebook and then go back on to access that lesson, when they go back in, it's likely that the work that they completed will not be there anymore. You will have that work saved in your teacher account, so you won't have lost a record of it, but it will look to students as if their work was not completed. So just be aware of that as you're assigning student-paced lessons that might cross over more than one day. You can change the calendar code to last for a longer or for a shorter amount of time if you'd like. We'll X out of this. Also, let's take a look within your Nearpod account, some of the other tools across the left side. If you're wishing to access student reports after you've launched a live lesson or a student-paced lesson, we'll click on Reports and take a quick look at what that will look like. You will see in Reports all the lessons that you have launched listed, I believe, chronologically. And then if there's a lesson that you've launched more than once, we'll just click here. That one's launched only once. We'll scroll on down just a little bit. This lesson way at the bottom, the trip in the United States, I launched 5 times so I can see the date of those sessions. You can rename those sessions. If I click on one of those sessions, you'll see what a report looks like. You get a student summary, and depending on the types of questions, you can click on each type of questions and you can see the students' data by their name, and then also a nice pie graph to show a scattering of their answers. In the draw it responses, you're able to see, again, thumbnails of all their drawings, and you're also able to open up those thumbnails so that you can do some assessing after the fact. We will click out of that. Moving on down, a subplan is a place where you can store plans that you intend to share with the sub. You have a school library and a district library. And also in your account, I'd like to highlight the teacher resources. Teacher resources have a ton of different short videos and PD opportunities on some of the different Nearpod tools. So if I scroll down, we have webinars, videos to get started. The webinars have a calendar of what's available, lots of different available webinars, teacher and admin resources, and so on. The getting started videos, I believe, will link to their YouTube page, and the Nearpod YouTube page has a ton of videos on each of the different activities, basically showing exactly how to do that. We'll come on back to the dashboard. The Nearpod library is quite extensive. When you click on that Nearpod library, it updates pretty regularly to show you content that is relevant to the time of the year that it is. So you can see Black History Month pops up right away, and across the top you'll see current events and other relevant pieces to the time. And then scrolling on down, you can see different filters that are already set that you can click on, and by clicking on any one of them, there's some Valentine's Day ones right there, it'll bring up lessons and show you the grade level. You can also filter by subject, you can filter by grade, you can filter by standard, you can filter if you're just looking for a specific video, or maybe you want to filter and just look at activities and take a look at some of those short Nearpod activities with like the matching pairs, time to climb, and so on. So there's a lot available to search within that Nearpod library. Finally, a couple new features that are fairly recent within Nearpod is this quick launch feature. If you click quick launch, there's 4 activities that you are able to launch without even having a lesson created. So maybe on the fly you want to ask an open-ended question, or on the fly you want to launch a collaborative board, just a collaborative board with your students to gather ideas and nothing else. You can quickly create that, enter a topic just like you would within the Nearpod add-on, and then by hitting quick launch, you will get a quick code or a similar share interface to share with your students. Just like that. You can share through Google Classroom, share a direct link, or have them type in that code. And then there I've got a collaborative board, nothing else associated. It's not an entire lesson, but you can launch those 4 items separately. We'll click back within the lesson I looked at earlier, and the last couple new features is a whiteboard feature. This is really, really new. You are able to open a whiteboard that will be a blank whiteboard, or this editing pencil will allow me, I can annotate right on this slide, and if this is right in the middle of a live lesson, it's going to appear automatically on the student screens. So if I have students that are brainstorming differences between cats and dogs, and you are entering this text on you've opened the whiteboard and you're entering the text on your teacher screen, it's going to automatically go to those student screens. So that could be a really neat feature, a way to generate ideas together, or to start an activity together and then close and have students finish it on their own. If I click open whiteboard, it's going to open a blank whiteboard. But again, that's a whiteboard this is right within a created lesson. So students are going to have access to this whiteboard. So again, it becomes a lot more collaborative. There's a lot more to Nearpod than everything that I've shown you in this short view. Within a lesson, if a student needs to join after the lesson has started, they can always join by this lesson code, or by clicking it. You can pop up the share link, the join link at any time within a lesson. It's always visible within that active lesson. So that, in a nutshell, gives you a good overview of Nearpod and your ability to take slideshows and make them interactive with activities and content through the Nearpod add-on on Google Slides. I hope that you were able to learn a lot, and please, if you need any assistance getting started with Nearpod in your classroom, don't hesitate to contact your friendly tech coach. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.